Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. My name is Mark Richards, and I'm delighted to serve as your worship associate today and welcome you fully into this space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, histories, ethnicities, and bodies here. We welcome your mind and your heart and your spirit here. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We welcome all of you. Guests are invited to come early on another Sunday and drop into the Inquirer session at 10:10 a.m. in the parlor, where you can learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our church in a smaller, more casual setting. We invite our guests to fill out a welcome card located in the pew rack in front of you and drop it in the offering plate later in the service. You can also pick up a welcome packet at the back of the sanctuary, where you will also find hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals. Additionally, a fragrance-free area is located in the first few pews on the right side of the sanctuary. If you're a visiting family, including children or youth, after the time for all ages, please join the children's recessional and head across the hall to the common room. There you'll be greeted by someone who will orient you to religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is invited for coffee and conversation in the common room. My name is Mark Richards, and you can come talk to me there at the guest table. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert for the numerous opportunities available here. In particular, let me draw your attention to a couple. If you haven't pledged yet, don't forget to pledge today. Your fellow members working on next year's budget are waiting. The ushers have pledge cards available, and there are some at the membership table in coffee hour, or you can fill out the form on our website under Ways to Give. Also, the pulpit guest team is seeking proposals for summer worship services led by church members. So to apply, fill out the form on our website by April 1st. No April Fool's jokes, April 1st. Associate Minister Dina McFeeters works individually with speakers to prepare their service. Please find details on these and more events in the announcements. Don't forget and on another Sunday, come for the 10:10. Finally, please silence any electronic devices for the remainder of the service. Once again, I welcome you to First Church by inviting you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in the order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. I'd now like to invite my friend Kate Hayes to come up and light our chalice.
Our opening words this morning are from Wayne B. Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Will you please rise in body or spirit and join
Good morning. I missed you all. The story that I have for you today is Lord of the Rings, as told like a bedtime story by Sarah Eggers. Once upon a time, in a land far away, a boy with a magic ring saved the world. The boy went on an adventure with 8 friends. They climbed high mountains, canoed down swift rivers, and walked through underground palaces. They battled a monster at the edge of a burning hot volcano. And it all started with a present he received on his uncle's birthday. But it wasn't a regular present, oh no, and it wasn't a regular birthday. Frodo's uncle, Bilbo Baggins, had just turned 111 years old. He was the oldest man to ever live in their village. And on that birthday, Bilbo gave his nephew a magic golden ring from one of his own adventures long ago. The magic ring turned Frodo invisible. It's fun to be invisible. You can play tricks on your friends, you can hide from people you don't like, and you can slip away from danger. A magic ring is very handy. But the ring came at a cost, like all magic does. The magic ring, made from the raging volcano in Mordor, a land far away from Frodo, fed a shapeless, dark creature. The more Frodo used the ring, the more powerful the monster became. The shapeless creature grew powerful, and it tore up the trees in the forest, it burned the grasslands, and it attacked people's homes. It had to be stopped. So Frodo got together 8 of his friends, and they came up with ideas on how to stop the monster. "He's too strong for us to fight," said his friend Aragorn. "How can we lock up something we can't see?" asked his friend Pippin. "I know," said his eldest friend, Gandalf. "If he gets his power from the ring, then we'll destroy the ring." "But I want to keep the ring," cried Frodo. "Don't be greedy. By giving up the ring, you can help us all." So Frodo thought this over. "But how do we destroy a magic ring?" asked Frodo. "We melt it. We put it someplace that is so hot it will melt," replied Gandalf. "And what will be hot enough to melt it?" asked Gimli. "The volcano," cried Gandalf. So it was settled. Frodo and his 8 friends would travel to their faraway land of Mordor to melt the magic ring and save their homes and forests and lands. It was a long walk. They climbed up the snowy peaks of mountains, almost falling into the abyss of snow valleys. They went through eerie mountains with beautiful but cryptic underground palaces. And they walked through mysterious ancient forests, gliding down streams on boats. But when they came close to the volcano, they had to stop. The big, shapeless creature guarded the volcano path. How would they ever get past him? Was this the end of the adventure? Aragorn had an idea. "Frodo, you go to the volcano with our friend Sam, and we will stay here and fight the monster so you can slip past him and get to the volcano." So Aragorn and the rest of Frodo's friends drew out their swords, arrows, and axes, and they went to battle with the shapeless creature that hurt their towns. Now was Frodo and Sam's chance. They ran past the monster and headed up the path to the opening of the volcano, but there were enemies guarding the path. Frodo and Sam found some of the enemy's armor and used it to blend in, and they finally made it up to the volcano. "Wow, this is really hot," exclaimed Sam. "Well, let's hope it's hot enough," shouted Frodo over the noise of the rumbling volcano. He took the ring from his pocket, the gift from his uncle, and he chucked it into the burning hot center of the mountain. There was a great flash of light after the ring dropped out of view, and the ground began to tremble, and lava spewed out all over the path. "Run!" shouted Frodo, grabbing Sam's hand and pulling him to safety. They ran down the path, narrowly avoiding all of the hot lava. At the bottom of the path, they saw their friends, cheering them on. "You did it!" said Gandalf. "Right before the volcano shook, the monster disappeared. He is gone." And that is how, one time, far away, a boy with a magic ring save the world. For our children's recessional, we invite children and teachers to sing in verse 1 of the hymn and then proceed to class as the congregation continues. Would you please rise in body or spirit for children's recessional hymn 348, Guide My Feet.
I'd like to invite you to join in a time of contemplation now, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life. So just pause for a moment and find yourself. Feel your body. Your feet on the floor grounding you. The top of your head connecting you to all that is. And your breath moving in and out. Bringing you into being here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. Be with all the people who are unsure today. All those who are questioning, wondering what their purpose is, where it leads, what the next move in that direction is. And be with those who are already on their path. All those already tobogganing down some great adventure, sliding down mountains, past monsters and valleys, sheer cliffs and sparkling trees. Keep them steady with purpose as they flip and fly around the twists and turns of the journey. And be with those at the end of the road, whether they're resting or letting go, sleeping or weeping. Hold all our hands, wrap all our hearts in comfort and courage, guiding us with purpose in this life's journey and grounding us all in love. May it be so.
In 2010, my son Owen was born. My wife Sarah and I were living in New York while I worked at the U.S. Military Academy, and we're getting ready to move to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas for a year of schooling, followed by an assignment to an Army unit that was certainly going to deploy to Afghanistan or Iraq for a year. During our time at West Point, we made friends with many families that had been through deployments with small children. Some kids weathered those 12-month absences with few complications, and other kids were traumatized. During the 4 years we were there, I couldn't pin down why some kids were negatively affected and why others weren't. So in the interest of being a father who didn't subject my family to 12-month deployments, I decided to trade a successful career as an Army officer for the unknown prospects of the civilian world. The Army was the only thing I had known in my professional career, and I was completely unsure about what I wanted to do afterwards. While I was optimistic about the opportunities and excited about embarking on another adventure, I was genuinely anxious about the unknown. The journey from being a professional soldier to an amateur businessman was difficult. The culture was different, the people were different, the work was different. I didn't feel like I belonged there. I wasn't good at what I did. The work lacked purpose. I had left a profession and traded it for a job. I had lost my identity. Before, I was a soldier, and then, I didn't know what I was. It didn't take long before I questioned my decision and started looking for a way to go back. It just so happened that the Army was looking for people to come back to active duty. So I filled out the application, reached out to my former bosses for letters of recommendation, and was ready to leave corporate America behind and rejoin my tribe in the Army. But during this time of soul searching and looking inward, we had joined First Church as a way to connect our family to a community of values-based and mission-oriented people. We quickly hit it off with a few members who welcomed us with open arms, and shortly thereafter, something inspired me to volunteer as a youth mission trip advisor. It was through those two conduits in which I gained some clarity. Over a beer with a friend from First Church, I realized that my reasons for leaving active duty hadn't changed. I still wanted to be a father who was there for my kids. Going back wouldn't help me do that. And over 3 summers of working with First Church youth during the mission trip, I gained a new sense of purpose. I realized that the purpose I had felt connected to in the Army was about helping and serving others. Working with our youth was a thoroughly fulfilling experience to serve and help them. Since then, I've deepened my relationships within the First Church community, the Shorewood community, the CrossFit community, and the Army Reserve community to reestablish my sense of belonging and purpose. And while I still search for the professional fulfillment I found in the Army, I'm closer to being at peace with where I am.
Rabbit-Proof Fence, the 2002 film that was based on a true story of 3 mixed-race Aboriginal girls in 1930s Australia. Sisters Molly and Daisy and their cousin Gracie tells a story about them living happily with their mothers in the dry brush outback of Western Australia's Jigalong. Their mothers are careful to keep them hidden from government officials when they come around, because at that time, Australia's Aboriginal Act had a policy of kidnapping mixed-race children to be trained to serve as indentured servants to white people. And while they were happily living a traditional life for many years and their mothers kept them away from these government officials, one traumatic day, the government kidnapper caught them and stole the 3 screaming girls from their mother's arms, pushing them into a black government car and taking them thousands of miles away to the Moore River Native settlement camp. Now that camp was awful, with rotten food and long hours of forced labor and beatings as punishment. But Molly, the oldest girl at 14, did her best to protect the younger Gracie, who was 10, and Daisy, who was 8, from abuse and neglect. And Molly was a creative, imaginative girl who came up with a plan to escape. And when she saw rain clouds in the sky that would wash their tracks away, she convinced Gracie and Daisy to run. Molly knew she must get the girls somehow back to their home over 1,500 miles away on the other side of Australia. So the 3 girls, ages 14, 10, and 8, set out into the dry and dusty 1930s Western Australian outback with no friends, no food, and no money. In the magical land of imagining, I love an epic adventure story. That hero's journey home, twisting and turning, monster-filled, realizing your purpose and fighting Cyclops and Sea Monster. In my mind, I'm some sort of swashbuckling pirate on an odyssey, swinging through the air, brandishing a sword and saving the day, all before bedtime. But in real life, epic adventures are usually not that fun. The safety of our couches makes monsters seem exciting rather than death-dealing, and rescues seem fated rather than hard-wrought. Epic adventures in real life include loss and fear and trauma, and sometimes afterward, post-traumatic stress. The risks feel a lot more frightening, the monsters a lot more awful when the consequences are real. For Molly and Daisy and Gracie, the consequences of their adventure are losing everything. Losing their home and their mothers, losing their identities and language and way of life, maybe even losing each other. And the monsters are not shapeless, dark creatures, but rather they are real, live men who think that serving and protecting Australian whiteness is more important than those little girls' lives. Not only do those monsters steal them from their homes and take them into servitude, but they chase them when the girls escape. They pay an indigenous tracker to hunt the 3 little girls for hundreds of miles. But creative and clever 14-year-old Molly remembered another story of protection. 20 years before, government men had started living in their town because the government was building a rabbit-proof fence to protect white settlements from rabbits. Now, rabbits are also very clever, and they will just go around a regular fence. So the government built a rabbit-proof fence that ran the length of the continent. Almost 2,000 miles of fence. And one leg of that fence ran near the Rivermore Native settlement, and another leg of that fence pointed back home to Jigalong. Molly knew that if she could find the fence, they could walk it all the way home. On a hero's journey, a powerful sense of purpose guides through mountains and valleys, monsters and losses. Purpose overrides fear, drives through obstacles and setbacks. The purpose of getting home. The purpose of destroying the ring and saving the Shire. The purpose of defeating Lord Voldemort, of defeating the Death Star. In real life, we have the guiding purposes of things like defeating the Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility, of stopping We Energies from increasing the amount of mercury they release into Lake Michigan, and defeating that shapeless, dark monster of white nationalism. Each purpose has 1,000 different possible tactics pointing us in different directions and crooked lines, but the purpose can keep us holding true while the ways that we might achieve it change. And each purpose is nested inside a bigger and even more true purpose. Princess Leia and the Rebel Alliance want to defeat the Death Star, but ultimately what they want is goodness and truth to rule in the universe. Defeating the Death Star and Darth Vader is just one way to achieve that. But other ways will arise, as we know. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold tight to the purposes that are embedded in our principles. When we know that everyone is inherently worthy and that we are all connected, we're called to act in ways that realize those truths in the real world. First Church's purpose is our mission as a congregation, nurturing spirits, engaging minds, inspiring actions. And then, nested within that purpose, we have our ends, which are the specific ways we're going to try to realize that purpose right now. But there's more than one answer to how we will achieve those purposes. We know we want to head towards more authentic connections between people of different races and ages and ethnicities, but there are a lot of different ways that we could achieve that. We know we want to follow the leadership of people directly affected by injustice, but we don't necessarily know what form that will take because it's based in relationships that are still being built and then following those relationships wherever they might lead. When we set the intention, when we say our purpose will guide us, we don't necessarily know what will happen next, what the budding relationships will ask of us, or what the world's needs will demand. 10 days ago, on Friday, March 15th, the world experienced yet another white nationalist terrorist attack, this time at a mosque in New Zealand. A white man intent on doing harm in the name of white supremacy wanted to make Muslim communities afraid. afraid to go to prayer, afraid to gather together for worship, to be with one another in sacred space. And indeed, that afternoon, the New Zealand government issued a warning for people to stay away from mosques while they tried to assess the breadth of the threat. And even though they caught the terrorist that Friday, people were still afraid to return to worship the following week. So for Friday, March 22nd services at New Zealand mosques, New Zealand biker gangs stood outside during prayer. The president of the Waikato mongrel mob, Sonny Fatu, said that someone called his biker gang and told them that their local Muslim community was afraid to go to Friday's worship, and invited the biker gang to be part of the safety net for that community to be able to pray in peace without fear. Sonny took that call and he said, "Yes, we will come." In fact, he said it was without question that they would be part of that safety net. They agreed to go unarmed and peacefully secure the inner gate of the mosque so that the Muslim community could be at worship together and feel at ease. "This is what we were asked to do," Fatu said, "and so this is what we will do." The Waikato Muslim Association's leader, Dr. Asad Mohsen, said the support gave the Muslim community the strength to overcome the grief that they were undergoing. He also welcomed the bikers to come into the mosque and pray with them, saying, "They are a part of us and we are a part of them." Here in Milwaukee, last week, the Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee put out the call for clergy who wanted to give their condolences and express their support for the local Muslim community to come to prayer at the Islamic Society of Milwaukee. And then this past Thursday, on March 21st, many of our community leaders and clergy and people of faith went to a vigil for the New Zealand victims and to stand united against hate with our local Muslim community. Their community leaders and people of faith reflected and held space for grief and prayed for a better future. The Islamic Society of Milwaukee's Ahmed Qureshi expressed gratitude for the difference that the Interfaith Conference continues to make for the greater Milwaukee Muslim community. And he said that the vigil allowed people to come together and stand up for love, understanding, and the truth that we are all siblings in humanity. It matters when we show up for one another. It matters when we show up after disaster, crisis, after serious violence. But it was the work and the relationships that happened for years before the disaster, before the violence, that enabled the moment of showing up. It's easy to see people standing on podiums giving speeches, or to see bikers standing outside a mosque offering a peaceful security presence, and not to see the years of relationship building that went into those moments of someone being able to make a call and say, "Will you come?" You don't see the years of trust that went in to making that call possible and making the answer possible. Yes, I will come. We don't know what each day will bring. We don't know what this world will demand of us. There are so many paths moving out from each dawn's possibility. And so we must ground ourselves in our purpose. We must ground ourselves in real relationships of trust that will enable us to show up and respond to whatever the day brings. We must keep going out into an uncertain world, one that contains adventure, risk, real monsters, and let ourselves be guided by purpose. We must put that purpose to work on each day's new question, responding to whatever is happening in the world right now, while also doing the daily, long, slow, intentional work of building real relationships of trust. We create those bonds of trust and love so that we can rely on them in the moment of crisis. We combine a steady plan, follow the rabbit-proof fence for 1,500 miles, with the circles and the dodges that we have to create to respond to every new day's dawning. Because I promise you, monsters are creative too. Those monsters that are shapeless or shape-shifting will create and generate new plans of their own, and so we have to be able to both have a plan and respond to what's happening. 14-year-old Molly set her intention. She knew her purpose: get home. And then she developed a strategies using one of the monster's own tools, the rabbit-proof fence. And she and Daisy and Gracie set out to walk that fence for 1,500 miles. But even with a determined purpose and a steady fence line, their journey still experienced unexpected twists and turns. They had to dodge the grown men hunting them, who figured out that they were following the fence. So they wound out and around, they hid and came back. They circled for food and water. They both had to follow the fence and to make their following unpredictable enough to elude their captors. And finally, after 9 weeks of walking, after going for over 1,500 miles through the outback, after hiding from the adult men hunting them and finding food and water without getting caught, 14-year-old Molly and 8-year-old Daisy made it home to Jigalong. They made it home to their mothers, to safety, to their lives. But they also lost Gracie along the way. She got captured by one of the monsters and they never saw her again. Because this is based on a real story, there's no neat and tidy ending with no consequences and no loss. It's not just an epic adventure of excitement. In real life, monsters mean trauma, loss, lives forever changed. And yet, love calls us to make faithful risks anyway. Love calls us to go for escape and make it home anyway. Love calls us, even if you don't know what to do next, even if it's really, really scary, to keep loving each other through the fear, to walk out into the unknown even when it's dangerous. Love calls us to risk helping someone, hide from monsters, to stand unarmed in front of our neighbor's house of worship when it is truly under threat. Love calls us to take faithful risks in the real life adventure where there are consequences. In order to do this, we have to let go of control. of knowing exactly what will happen or what to do next, and let ourselves be guided by purpose and love. And the truth is, in real life, it might not all be okay. But if we stay grounded in what matters, if we stay true to purpose and to love, then we will retain our humanity along the dangerous journey. And with our hearts in that place, while it might not be okay, it will be closer to fine. Rebecca Solnit wrote that the opposite logic of white supremacy is the understanding that we are all connected, that we are all in this together. We counter the framework of violent separation with the intentional webbing of interconnection. And when someone rips the web, we sew it back together again, building relationships and communities with stitching that is stronger than violence. To do this well, we have to keep building relationship, keep coming back to purpose, keep listening, keep reflecting on our own roles and intentions. Relationships take long-term, intentional, invested heart and soul work. But they are what is needed to face the real life epic adventures. There is real risk in this world. There's real risk in justice work, real risk in relationship, real risk in walking 1,500 miles through the desert, guided only by love. And yet, our purpose calls us to take long-term, faithful risks grounded in interdependence. Our faith calls us to follow our purpose in all of its crooked lines back to the home of love. May it be so.
Every week we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all the non-pledge cash in our offering plate with a community organization. In this way, we commit our resources in line with our belief that this congregation is interdependent with the world beyond these walls. Today, we share the plate with Pathfinders who bring safety, hope, and healing to youth in crisis. May the practice of giving bring us joy. The offering will now gratefully be received.
Will you please rise in body or spirit for a responsive reading? This is adapted from Holding Reality and Possibility Together by Samuel Trumbore. I'll begin. What an unearned blessing to delight in life, to hear the robin's song again at daybreak. Each moment of wakefulness has so many gifts. Yet too often they seem unavailable as the weight of our troubles press down on us, the threats to our well-being feel like mosquitoes in the night looking for a place to land. Minds become captive to rising floodwaters. Even in moments of great danger, fear can dominate the mind, or love can unbind it. The soil of the mind can be watered with kindness. The thorns can be removed one by one. Great possibilities await us, even if all we can see is the cliff before us, the grandeur of life of which we are a part. Scatters rainbows in every direction. Even as the deluge approaches. Holding reality and possibility together is the holy, hope-filled work of humanity. If you choose it again and again in love. And will you join in singing our closing hymn, 130?